Oh no, you're not home yet. I only remember about the time change because it like threw me off the last two. I know I guess it was like a year ago. Everyone was messaging me like, "Where are you, Eric? Like coffee with Eric is supposed to start," and I was thinking it was an hour later. So I was just like, "Why is everyone messaging me?" And then it was like the opposite the next time where yeah. So anyway, this is super confusing with like the time changes because all the countries are different and nothing lines up and it's, ah. Oh no. I'm sorry I've destroyed your day. Or the existence of time zones has destroyed your day or whatever. They, I think I'm bringing this up every time, but I keep hearing in the news vaguely that like countries are talking about getting rid of daylight savings time and just having things stay consistent, but it never seems to happen. This keeps happening. Okay, see you in 30 minutes. I was having this debate with someone or talking about like if because right now like basically at least here when time changes then it gets dark super early, um, or for me it's super early, or for people around here it's like 5 p.m. or something like that. I know some places are a whole lot earlier than that, but yeah, so the debate was like, would you prefer it to get dark earlier, or be darker in the morning? And I couldn't decide. I don't know. I kind of like I don't know. For me, I love when I'm like nerding out. I love darkness. I can flip my computer to like dark mode and just have some cozy coffee and turn the lights off and just work on stuff. It's like my favorite thing ever. Um, so, but I don't know if whether I'd prefer that to be like in the at 5 p.m. or like in the morning. All right, let's see. What is my motivation to create these games? Yeah, I should say I love the small but dedicated community. Like that is super awesome. I guess I like being in a place, and I'm trying to be in a place where I'm still doing it because it's fun. It's not like something I'm just trying to do to like get rich or like scale up a company or anything like that. So um, yeah, I would say that's my motivation. Is like I'm in this. I feel like it's a sweet spot or a happy place where it still feels like I'm just doing it because I like doing it, but it's still it pays the bills and whatnot. So it's something I can do as a job, which is um, yeah. I feel like that's my happy place. As I've mentioned before, it's been 10 years now, which is crazy, but about 10 years ago, I was working at Pixar for about 10 years, it was like the opposite end of the spectrum in a way, where it was a giant studio. I mean, not that giant, but, it was a giant group of awesome people. It was great to work with them and all that. But it was also like it felt a little bit like I was a small part of a big thing, which it was fun. But now it's like this is kind of the opposite, where it's like I'm a big part of a small thing, and a lot of people are like, why would you ever leave Pixar? Like, what's wrong with you? But for me, there's a lot of motivation, or there's a lot of fun just kind of being able to like steer my own little ship, even though it's a small ship. So I would say it's, for me, a nice place to aim for is kind of having a small thing like this, where it's like there's not a lot of overhead, and I kind of get to make, I like to wrap you folks in on decisions, and kind of have it be a community thing a little bit too. But it's like at the end of the day, it's kind of like my baby, and I can do what I want with it, and take it in the direction I want to go and things like that. So I totally love that trade off. Again, the opposite end of the spectrum was fun too, but I kind of like the freedom and flexibility and not having to worry about doing things for purely monetary reasons. I mean, there is still that. It's like there's like right now I've mentioned my server costs are getting kind of crazy, spinning up all these V2 servers and little things all over the planet. So it's like I gotta revamp the game a little bit so that it can pay for that stuff. But in general, it's a lot less stressful than like, let's say if I had to support a team of like 100 people or something like that. I feel like that would be super stressful in terms of if the game doesn't make money, then suddenly everyone's out of a job or something like that. So anyway, I hope that answers the question. But yeah, I feel like for me there's yeah, it's this weird, nice intersection between something that feels like a hobby and something that's a job. So I kind of like keeping it small. That being said, I know I caveat this. I put a little asterisk that like if the game started to make enough money, maybe I'd consider hiring people or something like that. So who knows what the future holds? But for right now, I'm very happy. Yeah, kind of doing the small indie thing. So I apologize to everyone who has to wait so long for everything to get done, though, because I know that I'm definitely the bottleneck sometimes. That's why I hate giving people dates like, oh, 2.0 will be out on this date. Like I'm trying to avoid that because it's so impossible to like get everything done, in any predictable amount of time. Like this last 2 weeks, I've basically just been working on getting the Apple versions updated, like the Mac App Store version in particular. So, which I'm happy to say is it's all updated and the volume is very loud. One second. I still need to write a slider control so I don't have to do this little hold the button down thing forever. But yeah, so I've been spending several weeks like getting basically the Mac version, which has been super out of date. If you go to the Mac App Store, if you search for Bomb Squad, it is still up on here somewhere. Version history, version 1.4.141, 5 years ago. So it's just a little out of date. But I'm happy to announce that, yeah, after kind of doing a ton of work on it, like putting a ton of stuff back together, as of yesterday, I submitted the update, and as of 1 hour ago, this is always like I feel like it's like a heart fluttery moment, when you're working and then you get this little email like your app is in review. So 1.7.28 is hopefully will pass review soon and will be on the Mac App Store very shortly, or sometime today, and hopefully doesn't crash for people. Oh, is today a coding session or a fun session? Are you saying coding isn't fun? What? Yeah, today is basically a no plans day, so I'm down to just chat random stuff. But yeah, if anyone wants to, we could hop in a server and do some playing too. So today is a free-for-all session. How about that? So yeah, anyway, that's been my big thing for the last few weeks is getting that Mac version updated. It's yeah, it feels a little bit like I can take a breath out now, because it's like once there's that moment when like you ship it off for review and it's like, okay, it's done. But then of course it gets through review and then there will like people be reporting bugs since there hasn't been an update in years. And so then it'll get very very hectic again. But for a moment it's like a breath of it's like the eye of the hurricane. It's like a little, a calm moment. Yeah, so another side effect of doing all that work on the Apple version is a lot of what I was doing is kind of rewriting things for like the iOS builds, which the plan is still for those to come out at 2.0. So roadmap sequel doesn't have to show up if anyone's curious. But yeah, a lot of the work I was doing on this like revamped Mac version will also apply to like iPhone, iPad, and Apple TV and stuff like that. So it's a lot of good stuff that I needed to get done. And now it's done, or at least it's done enough for now. It's probably a little bit of polishing that still needs to happen at some point, but yeah. So now my next thing will be the Android version. I got to kind of put the Android version back together. So this big like 1.7.28 build that I've been, as I mentioned, it's kind of turned into a bigger thing than I expected it to be. But if you come into downloads, you'll still see there's no Android test build right now. I'll try to get that back up, hopefully within the next few days, if I'm not like overwhelmed with putting out fires on the Mac version or something like that. But so you can see there's been a decent amount of changes in 1.7.2.8. Like this has definitely gotten bigger than I expected it to be. So a lot of very cool stuff. Like if you're on the the PC version, there's like the frame rate support and the simplified SDL stuff and all sorts of things, VSync. So it's a very nice improvement, I think. But yeah, it's definitely it's been a bit of a longer cycle than I thought. Linking two V2 accounts is possible. Was intended or unintended? It should be, when you say linking to V2 accounts, it should be possible to link two different types of logins. Wait, or I'm curious what you mean when you say linking to V2 accounts. Um, like, yeah, you should be able to have, like a Google Play login and, or yeah, maybe are you talking about like the old V1 linking? Oh, so you're probably going through the old V1 linking, right? Like technically that is possible. It's, oh man, I should draw a diagram for what this stuff is. So there's like V1 accounts and V2 accounts, and then each one has like a set of logins attached to them. There's V1 logins and V2 logins. And the place I'm trying to get to is basically have everything go through V2 logins. Because right now you can have weird situations where you can have two accounts that like share V1 data, but they each have their own V2 data or something like that, and it's super confusing. So what you're talking about might be something like that, where you have two different V2 accounts, but like you're linking them, yeah, using V1 linking. It is technically possible, but it will break in fun and exciting ways in the future. So it's like, if you want to do it for now, go for it, but just be prepared for a little weirdness later. Because like I said, you'll have a situation where, you'll probably have like the V1 data will be shared, but the V2 portion won't be, or something weird like that. And right now that doesn't actually matter because there's nothing in the V2 data. Like most everything is still like the old V1 account data. But like when squads stuff gets up and running and when future stuff gets up and running, that stuff's all going to be in the V2 data. So that's when you might run into some weirdness. So at some point down the road, you may want to like unlink the V1 side. But if it's working for you now, go for it. I'm not trying to raid on anyone's parade or whatever. The limitations that I put in for V2 linking, like if anyone doesn't know, the limitations are like if you have two email password V2 accounts, like you can't link those through the V2 linking. Or the same if you have two Google Play logins, you can't link those through V2 linking. And the purpose of that is that at some point down the road for like squad system and things like that, I'm going to try to be kind of strict with it where, you can log in only once at a time per account. And that's mainly just to prevent people from using accounts as like, the kind of the way that people used V1 accounts, where it's like you get a bunch of friends and link them together and then use that as, almost like a clan or something like that, which is totally fine. That's kind of what it wound up being used as, and that works. But I definitely want to kind of avoid that for squads system where like a single account should represent a single person. So if you're playing with your friends, like each one should have their own account. Part of that too is because for squads games and things like that, like your account tag will be a lot more prominent, and so people will kind of identify you based on that. So I wouldn't want a situation where like you're playing against a squad and like everyone has the same name, stuff like that. I need two servers with updated AI. Oh, is somebody running like the fancy AI bots on there? Or I have not seen it, but I think I read someone mentioned it. So, but yeah, as far as linking, if you want to do weird workarounds right now to have multiple V2 accounts linked through the V1 stuff, like go for it. But just as a word of warning, is it might cause problems down the road. So just be prepared for that. I won't try to like break it for you or anything like that. But yeah, that'll be interesting. Disrupt updated AI. So can you tell me about the AI? Is it just like better AI than the old crappy built-in one? Or do they have AI like for team games or something? Or I'm curious what the disruptive part is. I am really interesting to see like where that goes in terms of like AI based players. Like there's that part of me that's a little worried. And I feel like this isn't just a bomb squad thing. It's almost like an industry wide thing. Is like if it gets to the point where you can train an AI to like watch your screen and get really good at a game, it's like how are servers supposed to prevent that? Because it's like I feel like games like first person shooters, you can watch out for exploits like wall hacks or people that are clearly doing stuff they shouldn't be able to do. But in a case where like you have some AI that's just plugged in and basically playing as if a human would play, but really well. It's like how do you stop that? I was reading there was I think like Microsoft was like clamping down on like unauthorized Xbox controllers this last week or two. There's something like that because they were trying to prevent some. I mean, I don't know if it's this same thing, but they're trying to prevent some device that will let you. Oh yeah, in this case, it's some device that lets you use like a keyboard and mouse when you're playing on like a console, on the Xbox console or something. So they were trying to like prevent that just because it gives people an unfair advantage or whatever. So I mean that's kind of a different thing, but once they have something like that where you can plug it into your Xbox and AI will play the game for you, then it's like yeah, where do we go from there? So, but yeah, well, I don't know. We'll deal with that when it happens, I guess. Um, it is, in a way, part of the thing I'm excited for moving the game more to like the squad system and online based tournaments and things like that is that I won't have to do any client side scanning. It's like trying to get away from that, Like right now, there's the rootkit detection and stuff where it like scans your plugins or your mods or whatever to try to like prevent you from playing tournaments if it looks like you've kind of mucked with your code. And I'd love to not have to worry about that. So like when everything is server based, then it doesn't matter if you've mucked with your code because you're just connected to a server and the server's code is secure. Um, so yeah, I'm super happy. I'm super excited to get to that point where I don't have to do rootkits and things like that. And we could talk about that. That might be something we could turn off sooner rather than later anyway. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not excited about the idea of then having to do that, turn that stuff back on later if there's like client side AI stuff that we have to watch for. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But again, I feel like that's going to be a problem with like any game if it gets to the point, or maybe I should say when it gets to the point, because it seems like with progress that's going to happen. But when it gets to the point where like some AI player can connect to your server and just destroy everybody, like I don't know, we'll have to figure that out. Okay. I mean, in a way, it would be super cool to have AI that's like trainable to, be able to play arbitrary mini games. That's been a big limit of the AI in Bomb Squad. I mean, it's super simple. I know I've shown the AI before, but if you dig into the bot logic, like it's really dumb. It's basically just like it can't navigate complicated terrain or anything like that. It's basically just like give me a list of the enemies and go towards one of them and press punch or press bomb. When you're this far from them. Um, it's decently simple logic, but it gets the job done for basic stuff. But for making an AI that would work with like all the game types, be able to like understand how capture the flag works, especially on a complicated map, and like have strategies for that. Like that in itself would be a really tricky programming problem. But then like trying to have it be able to play, any of the mini games, that's like yeah, when people ask like why are there no bots in team and free for all, and like that's the answer is like there's such a big variety of play options that like trying to make a bot that would understand all that would be really really hard. And plus, then if people write mods and come up with their own games, it's like then you'd have to come up with bot logic for each game, and so yeah, just not something that seems like feasible. I was playing Mario Party. I have Mario Party. I love playing Mario Party when I have visitors or whatever. We'll bust out, get some four player Mario Party going, and they're pretty good about like they have bots on all the mini games. So it made me wonder like how much time they have to spend like training their bots or coming up with their AI for navigating those mini games. I mean, a lot of the mini games are pretty simple. It's like they're not so much physics based in a lot of cases, so maybe the logic is easier. But still, it's got to be a fair amount of work. What is going on with the ticket system? Why are you asking? I made the change in 1728. I'm going ahead and just like turning off continues. And part of this is, well, the reason for it is on the old Mac version, I was turning off continues because it didn't have continues originally. And I saw that as more like a mobile thing. That seemed like, I feel like uh, people are more normal to that type stuff, on mobile. So I didn't have it on the Mac version. But now that the Mac version has been updated with V2 accounts, I can't actually tell right now if somebody's playing on a Mac. So I'm just turning it off for everybody on 1728 Plus. And part of that is because I do plan to be migrating the game to kind of the new monetization stuff soon. So this is kind of like one step towards that. And I'll get into that more, but I plan on kind of having it's part of like squads mode and other things where, I just plan on kind of having a hopefully simplified, but hopefully better for everyone kind of monetization system where it's a bit more like normal games, where it's basically you can earn stuff as you play, and then the only annoyance will be that there'll probably be like after you play an online match or something that would give you stuff, you have to wait a bit for that stuff to unlock, or you can unlock it immediately with some free to play currency, stuff like that. So it'll be kind of moving to a system like that, which I know stuff like that is annoying, but at the same time it should mean that if you just play a little a day, or if you don't mind waiting for some stuff to unlock, you should be able to get more currency, things like that. Playing an online game will give you currency. Right now it's like pretty limited, where you can get tickets only through unlocking achievements. There's kind of like a set number of tickets you can get, unless you're doing tournaments online, which is like that's the one kind of open-ended way to get tickets. But with the new monetization system, it should be more hopefully fluid, where you can get tickets easier. Like I said, there'll be a little bit of annoying waits, and hopefully some of you will throw some currency in to skip those waits. Trying to find that like happy little balance area. But anyway, that's the changes that are going to be kind of upcoming. Oh, a few mistakes with Arabic. Yeah, probably. I mean, there's probably a few mistakes with a lot of the languages. If you'd like to track any of those down, if you're not familiar with the translation page, it's just, where is it? bombsquadgame.com.trans. Well, there's the link in the game. I think that's it. Yeah, bombsquadgame.com/translate. So yeah, if you want to submit any fixes for bad language bits, feel free. Much appreciated. That's something I saw someone else post I don't know if it's an issue report on GitHub or something recently, saying like Arabic isn't showing up properly in the PC version. That's something potentially getting close on my to-do list. Is like, it'd be fun to maybe spend a few days and get at least like the Windows version showing Unicode stuff properly. On a random side note, now that I just got done like getting the Mac version up to date. The next thing on my radar is getting the Android version kind of put back together, because it's kind of torn apart with all the 1728 changes. But after that, I'm hoping that'll only be a few days from now. After that, I don't know. I kind of thought maybe it'd be fun to do something random, like maybe that font support for the Windows version, or getting the Linux version updated so that more people can run it, or that it runs on the Steam Deck or whatever. I don't know. It seems like it's kind of fun to jump around a little bit. I feel like it keeps things interesting for me. But also, people have been asking for like that font stuff forever. It'd be great to get that in there. That's also, it's another like thing I need to do before I release it on Steam eventually. So it'd be great to like check that off the list. I agree that jumping around in topics here, but training bots does sound cool. Like I'd love to just do that, like learn how that works, and try to train a bot that is super awesome. I mentioned that before too. Like, it'd be super awesome to have like a bot contest. Like, everyone train your best bots, and we will have a tournament where we just watch our bots fight. Right now only the option to continue with tickets is going away. Tickets will stay. Yeah, tickets are not going anywhere. I don't plan on taking away anyone's tickets or anything like that. The only change will probably be like at some point the current like V1 tickets, you might not be able to purchase those directly anymore. We'll have to see. There might be like because for the squad system, there's going to be like this probably new currency called tokens, which will kind of be the one currency that you can buy, and then you can use that to like skip annoying waits and things like that. So nothing radical. But I imagine you might be able to like use those tokens to buy V1 tickets, or I'm trying to think of like a clean way to kind of transition to that new model. Um, I can explain it more, like the motivation behind it. Uh, I still plan on writing like a monetization manifesto, just describing like this is my plan. Like, give me any feedback you have in terms of how monetization will work. Because you going forward in the V2 era, I do want the game to kind of work in a few situations. One is like the standard like free to play sort of thing where that's what the game is now. But I also want the game to work in kind of a paid version, or a fully unlocked version. Like, let's say if you play the game on a subscription service like Apple Arcade or something, where you just get the game and there's no in-app purchases. Or if maybe on some platforms there'd be a version of the game where it's a one-time payment. So it's kind of I want the game to work in a situation where there is no purchasable currency. So that's kind of partly why I'm revamping things to where it works with or without. So yeah, I'll explain that more. So yeah, but things will be changing a bit. But for right now, the only real change is in 1728, continues are going away. The continue system is still there, so if you're writing a mod and you want continues, like, it should be pretty easy to flip them back on. But yeah, they're going away for now. Some other stuff might go away as the monetization system switches. Like, I'd love to unlock things, like playlist modding and soundtracks and stuff like that. Some of the stuff that Pro gets you, I'd love to have that like be available by default. Yeah, my hope is to have monetization will be more about skins and unlocking fun stuff and skipping annoying waits and things like that, as opposed to unlocking features. We'll see. That's still kind of not set in stone, but that's kind of where I'd like to go with it. The code was written through ChatGPT. Oh my goodness. I'm curious, any of you modders, like, I've been using the heck out of ChatGPT for like getting the Mac version together, like updated this last few weeks. Like, I don't let it write the code for me. I just use it as like a starting point. I found it's like really handy for just like, hey, show me how I would, do in-app purchase verification using Swift or something like that. And then it shows me something, and then I can use that to, as a starting point to kind of, I feel like most of the time the code doesn't actually work as written, or I mean, sometimes it does for like real simple stuff, but I find that it's usually like a good starting point. I feel like it's a better search functionality than, just typing that into Google and looking through Stack Overflow. Or like combined with that stuff, because I feel like when you look through Stack Overflow, at least right now, you're getting real human answers. So you're pretty sure, not always, but pretty sure that it actually is like a coherent thing. Whereas like sometimes with ChatGPT, you get like the weird hallucination where it's just like it's just making stuff up. Like, it gives you an API that just doesn't exist. Like, this function is not a real thing. Where at least Stack Overflow, you don't get that. You might not always get a perfect answer, but at least.
I remember actually that ChatGPT like isn't a search function. It basically like it only knows what it can find. So generally, when the stuff that I work with,
Uh-huh.
I generally don't use it because most of the time it's basically completely gibberish and unusable, because I don't do like popular languages, or for example, you want to make Godot, you probably or you're gonna find just like stuff from the documentation itself, something which I think is way easier with the documentation itself, because it's all laid out. You just type in the function and there it is, like no hidden like stuff or anything. So that is probably one thing where it could work, but then we have GitHub Copilot, which is, I think, more suited to this kind of workflow.
Oh yeah, that's probably worth trying. I've heard very good things about GitHub. Copilot. Um, that's a good point too. You mentioned that, like, if you're working with kind of the more obscure APIs you're working with, or
Yeah.
the things that ChatGPT probably knows less about. I feel like I'm kind of getting this sense of like I will ask it something that probably is very common knowledge, because I probably will do a good job with that. But yeah, obscure stuff, I think it's just gonna like make up answers. So it's kind of like this weird thing where you got to know like when to avoid it, because it's just gonna like cause problems in those cases.
Yeah, actually, when Copilot first came out, there was like a little controversy at the beginning where it was for the training they used Stack Overflow like code and stuff, and people got mad over it, and
Oh
still they
yeah,
can't get over it. So yeah, this is something that you definitely have to watch out. But then that's the thing: how do you recognize who wrote what? Like, code is kind of like the behavior itself is not really like. Can it be creative? Sort of. I don't know.
yeah, and that's Yeah, it would be a really interesting time to be like a copyright lawyer right now or something, with all this AI stuff. Or yeah, that's a good question with code. Even with human written code is like, yeah, if you write code that is basically you're referencing somebody else's code, but like changing the variable names, like is that plagiarism? Is that legal? Should that be, it's like all these weird fuzzy areas.
I've actually heard opinions that apparently the copyright law is like is very very outdated in the not only with the internet age but also the AI age where basically like everybody copies everyone else and remixes stuff. So
Oh yeah.
some people want like IP laws abolished, especially with Disney pushing it to like I don't know 200 years or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's crazy with their stuff. Yeah, trying to keep Mickey Mouse out of the public domain, stuff like that. Where
Yeah.
yeah, it's like Disney is single handedly responsible for pushing copyright in the U.S. at least. From it used to be yeah like relatively short. I was reading like all these movies and all this pop culture stuff that would be totally public domain right now if that hadn't happened. It was kind of like whoa.
Yeah, back in the day, it was closer to patents. It was like I think 5 or 10 years or something like that. It encouraged the copy like people to make stuff, even if they made something successful, so they cannot like stay successful. They have to keep working as artists should do, right?
Yeah, and I think
Now we don't
that's
have to do that.
yeah. I feel like that's how it should be. Is like yeah, that's the original motivation, but it's super frustrating when I hear about something now, or like when I do something myself, or it's a little bit of worry. Like if you're coding something and you come up with a good way to do something completely on your own, and then you realize like,
Yeah.
oh, this has been copyrighted, or this is trademarked, copyrighted, whatever. So it's a little bit like it becomes a minefield, or like the opposite effect, where it's like slows down progress because you can't, you're not free to
Okay.
like arrive at the best solution because someone has some legal ownership of it or whatever.
Oh, and let's talk about also patterns because there were apparently some game mechanics which were copyrighted, like the Shadow of War, I think, Shadow of Mordor system of villains remembering you and reacting to you. That was patented for a while.
Uh huh.
The Peggle gameplay was also patented. You couldn't use that. It was only recently released apparently, and also mini games in loading screens. That was
What?
a Namco thing. That was a Namco thing, and they took that out just recently. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
and Crazy Taxi gameplay
Great.
also.
That's super
Yes,
weird.
Crazy Taxi gameplay.
I feel like in general, the one thing it does seem like most of the time, like gameplay hasn't been copyrightable, or because there's so many games that are basically very similar gameplay to
Yeah,
another, like that. I could see that being a much worse situation if there had been some precedent for like, oh, you can't copy gameplay, then, or movies for that matter, plot points or things like that. It seems like at least it could be worse, I guess. But
definitely.
I know people have asked
I mean,
like, Bomb Squad being like, oh, there's some premises similar to Bomberman. Like, are you worried about that legally? And I was like, not on that point, not too much. I think a lot of games are very similar to others.
fine. I mean, if you added an official skin, then maybe they would have grounds to strike you down or something.
Oh yeah, like yeah, if you have the logo or the name, or there's certain lines you shouldn't cross. But yeah, if you're having gameplay
Yeah.
that is
But that would be intellectual property and not copyright, as in like patent gameplay patents and stuff. That
yeah,
would be something like a different offense, kind of.
yeah. But yeah, this AI stuff is an interesting topic. It's
Oh
I do
yeah,
have a bunch of friends who are like animators back at Pixar and people like that, and yeah, I know there it does seem like there's this feeling of dread, just like are we going to be replaced? Like is, which is weird. It did seem like I remember like 10 years ago with AI, there was kind of this thought of like oh it's or just technology in general like oh it's going to replace all the boring menial jobs and it's going to leave us free to do fun artistic things. Now it almost seems like the opposite, like oh AI is just replacing the artists. um,
no, actually, I'm less like scared about AI and I'm more about like actually. Okay, so here's the thing about AI. I think kind of turns art into a commodity, which in turn kind of makes it less desirable, or at least more in a case. Oh, this looks pretty. I want that, and not really engage it with like more on a deeper level because it's so easy to make in the AI age. You can just press a button and have a sad, sappy song, something classical,
yeah,
whatever genre you want, even those that were just barely touched in the last decade or something. So because it would be so easy, it would be less desirable and probably be less demand for it because you can just generate it. Even though people are like, oh, there's still gonna be a demand for human art and stuff like that, and I'm like, are you sure? Like you can like at one point we would be so close to like having infinite art that people wouldn't just make art to present something; they would just make it for themselves, or at least to explore their own feelings. Like, and back in the day, that was the only way you would probably earn money from art, or at least be remembered for decades to come. Like you would just make stuff because you feel like it and people would like it. And remember, like Mozart apparently was struggling financially, and he didn't recover during his lifetime. It's only like decades later that he's remembered as being this brilliant composer. And he was doing this freelance artist thing, like, you know.
Yeah, that is interesting and fascinating. There's I feel like in history we've kind of seen this happen before a little bit with it. It almost seemed like photography kind of did that to art. At least in my opinion, it seems that way because it seems like a lot art used to be, like Renaissance painters and everything was about like realism and making something that looked as true to life as possible. But then photography came out and did a better job at that in a way than any artist could. And so then art became more abstract and crazy and zany and more emotional and flowy, and it almost seemed like they had to get out of the way of photography or find other things to do. So it does make you wonder if AI will have a similar thing, kind of push people to do something like you said that's more just purely for personal reasons or whatever.
Oh, also Sok said something interesting. Basically, AI cannot emulate human emotions, and I'm something like, okay, so what does make art like speak to you? Like you can make something entirely surreal and incomprehensible as long as it speaks to you. Doesn't matter if it like follows the general patterns of what humans think is cool or stuff. As long as it speaks to you and you understand it, it works as an art form. Like for example, I like vaporwave. That's
Yeah.
a music genre which is built entirely on taking other people's works and mangling them and kind of knowing that even though you don't know the original source of the recordings, I still have those feelings. They're legitimate, even though they might not have been intended by the original artist. They might have been intended by the other artist, right? They take something and make it fresh, make it unique, right? But at the same time, though, you don't need, I think, complex imagery or messages or anything to convey emotion. Like sometimes all you need to have, for example, Journey. Journey is like a very cool game. It doesn't have words. It has very simple gameplay. You move around, you look at stuff. Camera has some stuff, and story is basically like extremely simple. Get to the mountain, have some troubles along the way, and that's it. So I think AI can actually replicate this game. Like it doesn't have a lot of moving elements. Like saying that AI cannot make art that speaks to humans, and humans won't find AI art appealing because it doesn't convey emotions or doesn't speak to humans. I think it speaks to like this kind of false like perception that of human exceptionalism, that humans are unique in the universe and have this own unique thing that cannot be replicated. Remember, animals can also have fun. We are animals. You animals can eat as so we are. The only difference between us and animals is that we have just a bit more moving parts to it. And I think AI can replicate those, or at least appeal to those moving parts. Like the only thing that counts is the end product for most people actually. Like most people like will go to the movies, watch a blockbuster or indie. If it's fun or if it's good, that's all they care about. Maybe some would, but that's not like a very big audience. Like Amazon exists and they make money. Disney exists and they make money. They can pander to like fans and make money still, even though it's kind of like devoid of emotions. So that's at least my take on the AI thing. I think AI can actually take us, but the reason why we make art will change definitely. Not because we wanna like get other people to like our stuff, but it could be like a conversation piece, right? Like I can talk to Sok about what he makes and stuff that we both make because it came from somebody, right? Like there is a unique mind behind it, even though the end product might be something replicable by the AI. Like
Yeah,
that's at
that's
least how
true.
I
Yeah.
see it.
I know people I feel like get ridiculed sometimes for being like AI artists, but at the end of the day, this stuff works well for
Prompters. That's
it's
how
like
they call prompters, like people who type into the AI and just make stuff pop out.
yeah. But I mean, I'm sure there's skills involved there, and as it gets more advanced, I'm sure maybe that'll be more of a skill set that people can develop is like wielding AI to good ends or whatever. Um, so Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of new technologies get that same kind of ridicule or something like that. Like, synth music when it first came out or something was probably like, what
Oh yeah.
idiot? Or yeah, or like you're saying, most
But
people
most
do
probably.
like most people do go for the kind of mass market stuff. You think about, another example of this sort of thing is like horses. It used to be like people who own horses or ride
Oh,
horses. It's like they're doing it because they like doing that. It's not like in most cases nobody needs to ride horses to get places anymore.
nah.
Um, whereas
Yeah,
back
they
in the
just look
day,
cool. They are funny. It's fun to take care of them and stuff.
yeah. Whereas, like 1 or 200 years ago, it was like people would probably think like that's weird. Like, why would you do that for fun? Like, we have to get places, and how else do you do it but a horse? So
Yeah.
that's why
Oh,
we have to take care of these
speaking of
stupid
those
things.
times,
It's like it just turns into.
yes. Yeah,
Um,
speaking of those times, actually back in the day, there was like a similar conversation when factories became normal and stuff could be mass produced that otherwise couldn't. Like you could make mass produced shoes, mass produced cloth and stuff, and people were actually outraged, like raging. People like didn't know it would take our jobs and stuff, and some people just embraced that technological leap, and instead people decided to fight for like rights, human rights, right? So that they can still be like compensated, or that they can like adapt to the market. Where if you can make infinite shoes, then what does a shoemaker can actually do? What can he contribute to a world where shoes are actually like you can make them and it's easy and it's cheap and it's all you need is a robot to do it for you.
yeah,
So I think something similar will happen with AI art. Like some artists would just learn to navigate this kind of landscape
yeah,
where where art is like everywhere and matters less. So
yeah,
how do you make art that matters to people,
yeah,
or at least how do you like sell your art as this sort of like how do you give it prestige? Because just because a human made it, like how does it differentiate from AI that can actually replicate the same exact thing? Like I said, it's the finished product that matters to most people.
yeah. Yeah, that is true. I feel like, one purpose of art or anything is to like stand out and catch people's attention. And so, when everything
Oh,
looks like monotonous AI art, someone who makes it not look monotonous or makes it look different, like, that's going to be a skill. So yeah, it's this weird evolving soup of stuff. Um,
and I guess even prompters understand this because if they want a specific piece of art that's like emulating a specific artist or something, they can do that obviously. But when new stuff is created, is when they mix prompts like different artists, different art styles. That's how you get unique things, and that's why people like get so they're gonna steal our jobs and stuff. Of course, the stealing jobs is fine because if you have like several from the same artist, of course you're gonna easily replicate it. Like you have a database, there's not a lot of like stuff going wrong or much creativity because you just take something and mix it like humans do. But I think sometimes I think like depending on the prompts you use, like it can like make it so that certain pieces of art can be technically like have more chances of it being original. Like it depends on the prompter essentially and the database that we have.
yeah, that's one.
And most databases, unfortunately, is on trained on ArtStation stuff. And if you've been on ArtStation, a lot of it is very similar.
Oh yeah. Well, I know that's a worry
I
I've
mean,
heard is
really
with.
good,
Yeah,
but similar. Yeah.
I've heard the worry of just the training set. Some people are saying, like as AI stuff gets out there, it's going to start winding up being trained on other AI stuff, which is going to kind of dilute everything, or turn everything very consistent or very muddy or something like that. Or like that's, I feel like that'll be an interesting challenge, as AI stuff becomes, which is essentially kind of based on other stuff, as that becomes more prevalent. Like, is that going to start to like pollute the pool if AI is trained on its own stuff? Is that going to, it's like inbreeding or something?
Actually, there is a term for this, or at least in the AI world, it's called like overfitting, where essentially the AI is trying to recreate a prompt, but instead it uses like a specific entry in the database and makes something very similar to that, which was where people got the, oh no, it's gonna steal our works. It's not like derivative because it's like super similar. It's basically copyright infringement and stuff. So that's where mostly the worries came from. That AI
Yeah.
would somehow, unknowingly, or when the creators don't notice it, that it would just essentially like recreate like it's the monkey type of situation, right? you have infinite monkeys. At one point, they will manage to paint Mona Lisa together.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It kind of brings up a like a weird philosophical question for me because like for with Bomb Squad, I you know a big goal is aiming towards a point where people can easily make mods and stuff like that and share them. And I do kind of want to at least moderate or encourage people, to build stuff out of real clay and kind of match that look of the game. But it brings up this question of like if there was AI that could just take a random like mesh and make it look like it was made out of clay, like is that something that would be cool to use, or is part of the appeal just like encouraging people to actually make things out of clay, and so you can see that their models are they were actually built with their two hands, like is one
Oh
better
yeah.
than the other? The kind of knowing thing is are handmade. Is that worth it, or is it the end result, like just what it looks like? Is that the goal? So it's kind of like the question there.
Oh yeah. If there's one thing I learned is that most people, at least in my opinion, like don't have the technical know-how to do it.
Yeah,
And
that's a big thing.
and having this in an AI that could essentially like take your like doodle in MS Paint or something and make something clay out of it, as long as it's like easy, and of course the results are good. I mean, they don't even have to look good. Like people will just eat it up, they
Oh
would use
yeah.
it, and that would be the low barrier of entry, and people will just use it because it will be much easier to get better results. You don't have to have like art training or know what photogrammetry is or what 3D meshes are, UV mapping, texture painting, texture projection in painting, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
there's lots of
true.
like moving parts to it.
If you think about it,
Like,
like it's
I don't-
lowering the barrier to entry and like
yeah,
democratizing it or getting more people able to do stuff. What the heck is
oh
going on
yeah,
here? Uh,
yeah. One of the easier stuff is your process, which is basically like make a photo, make a mesh that's and then project
that
the
work.
texture onto it, right?
Yeah,
But there's dozens of ways to achieve the same look. You can paint it yourself. You can do better UV mapping so that you have a higher quality texture onto it. But what you did works, and that's what most people can do. But
yeah,
yeah, it still takes work, and I did encounter a lot of issues with that workflow as well, and I have to like had to learn like in real time basically as I was working on it, what were the limitations, and of course the map design, which was like kind of in support of your workflow, kind of.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's definitely another factor. Is like if there's something that looks as good, most people aren't going to care if something was handmade or not. If it has that same look, like
Yeah,
that, at the end of the day, that's
yeah, similar feels. Yeah,
so. So yeah, maybe if there was something where like someone could just build a little mesh easily because with Blender that's not too hard or whatever, and then have it look really nice. Like maybe that's the better thing to aim for. That's a good question.
oh yeah,
So I guess there's the question of like if that can look as good. I know I mean it's theoretically possible.
it will soon enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I still feel like I can usually identify something that is photogrammetry versus something that was made with a you know material shaders in Blender that are supposed to look like clay or something like that. I feel like there's still like a visual difference, but if it could get to the point where that went away, like maybe it doesn't matter.
Like it's very hard to like replicate spontaneity in a medium that is all about like being deliberate.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's always been the challenge with computer graphics is that like everything is pristine and perfect and mathematical, and so trying to make it
Yes.
look like it's this random organic chunk of dented clay or something, it's like that takes a lot of
Oh yeah.
work. Like imperfection is a lot of work.
Like I could make a beautiful material that is close enough by following a tutorial, but I still had to do stuff like pre-render it or add some kind of imperfections from photo reference or something like that. I didn't reach that part. That was something I planned to do because even though I made a clay material, it was still too perfect. I had to like roughen it up, and that's how I also made like the other maps that with the textures that were closer to being like believable,
Yeah,
like detailed and stuff like that. I still had to do lots of like post process work for it to look good.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. I think
Oh,
that's.
and
Oh, go ahead.
and the photos, for example. Oh, for example, CrossJoe posted a screenshot from all of the maps, And for example, here's the perfect example. For example, like you take a photo, and if you don't have, and even in that process, you can still like have tons of issues. Like for example, here, I know probably this was taken with a photo camera, which is fine, but the texture, as you can see, is like the illusion kind of breaks when it's like too large and stuff. So it's like if you want to make like a full map that is plasticine, you kind of have to make it 1-to-1 in reality instead of like trying to composite it in, because stuff like lighting or the texture being too large, all of them be like can show that this is actually like a clay world. It's basically a photo, and it's super hard to get it right. And I
Yeah.
struggled with it
I mean,
for a long time.
yeah, me too. And I, like making all the, yeah, I feel like for me, making a map or anything like that, there's like a few passes. The first one is like get it in there, and then it's like, oh, this looks terrible, and then it's like, revamping stuff. A lot. I feel like there's a lot of iteration until it like mostly looks okay. But yeah, it is a lot of work. To, there's always little things that kind of give away that it like, oh, this is kind of a slightly stretched photo. Little,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. And most of these is not obvious. Some of these only come through experience, or just trying out different like mediums or things. For example, I trying to learn how to make games. I essentially had to learn Blender, how to paint and stuff like that, programs. So at some point, I was interested in the specifics of what those things entail, and I of course learned all the tools about Blender, and I found out, okay, I know why this looks kind of not right. Like, why does it feel like it's like fake? How do I mask that?
Yeah.
How do I fix it?
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in and answer this question real quick. What would you prefer, Bomb Squad
Oh
on
yeah.
PC or MacBook? At the moment, I mean, PCs are generally better gaming devices because gamers always use PCs. Right now, technically, MacBook might be better just because that's what I'm using, and so I'm coding it on that, and so like the fonts work and Unicode fonts work and stuff like that. So the Mac version gets a little bit more love from me, so I would maybe tilt in that direction, but eh, yeah, that's kind of. I definitely want the PC version before I launch it on Steam to be as polished or as close to as polished as the Mac version. So so yeah, if that answers the question, is Mac might have a slight edge, but in general, if you're gaming, use a PC. So slide nitpicks about Easter egg remap map. Oh yeah, yeah. This is Sock. That was a good example of. I feel like that when I was giving you little bits of feedback there, I feel like that's kind of the stuff I go through with my own maps. One thing that I've maybe mentioned this before, like the creative process. One thing I've found, which is interesting, is going back to my days at Pixar, working with my buddies at Limbic. There's always reviews where you have something and you've been iterating on it for days and you think it looks, hey, that looks pretty good, and then you show it to somebody else, like you show it to the director or you show it to just whatever your lead or something, and like they're immediately like, oh, this looks bad. This like they immediately see some parts that need to be improved, and I found that's definitely just a thing with being an artist or something, is like you start to almost like lose sight of the big picture after a few days or after staring at something so long. That
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's I feel like that is one way to address it, is just to like have someone else look at it because they see it with a pair of fresh eyes. But kind of a trick I've found, sort of working on my own, is just like come back to it after a month or something. Like go move on to something else, but then come back and take a look at it, and I feel like then your fresh eyes kind of come back, where it's just like, oh wow, I thought that looked good. um, so that's sort of been a. I feel like I've tried to do that a little bit with Bomb Squad. Is just since I don't have someone to show stuff. I mean, I could show you guys stuff. I guess I could try taking advantage of that. But whenever something is just me, like just stepping away from it for a while or coming back and like, what is my first impression of this? Thinking about that, it's like, whoa, I feel like you notice things more that like anyone else would notice that way. So random little tip that at least that's worked for me.
Alrighty. So Sok wanted me to talk about the map that we've been working on for the project of ours,
Oh yeah, go for it.
which you showed a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And nowadays on our like list was remaking a map. So we finally decided to like. So here's the thing. First, I had like like a basic layout of a map, but it turns out we could still fix something in the gameplay. So we were kind of hesitant to change stuff a lot, but I convinced Sok that, you know what, we can actually improve this, like make an even better version of the map. So I'm gonna try and load up an earlier version of the game to kind of show how the map used to look like. Maybe I'm just gonna go super back and just make a screenshot or something,
Cool, go for it.
because that way I can like you know show how it looks like, and then kind of you know show the differences. But I'm gonna do that later. But for now, while I'm setting this up, I'm gonna explain what I had to change, like what was the issue, and most of that is basically you know the thing about how it looks fake and stuff like that. So it turns out there's lots of moving parts. Like for example, we didn't go for the clay look. We're moving for the like impressionist painterly look. So it's like definitely a different process. So the original idea was that I would just make a texture, and then we would just paint on top of it, like kind of like slowly build up detail over it. But it turns out it's kind of hard because there's multiple ways you can do this. Number one is you can make the model, like assign the texture to specific coordinates and just paint the texture in an outside program. That definitely works, but the issue is when there's like hard edges, they are like super visible.
Yeah, that's always
And
tricky.
yes, and unfortunately, that kind of stuff is actually kind of very noticeable, but not at all. It depends on who you ask. And unfortunately, one of the things that I noticed when I was playing is that those hard edges, they were visible. Like at one point when I was playing, I could like my mind could like screams at me, this is not a painting, this is a 3D model with a texture on it. So okay, so what's the issue? Like, what is happening? I've loaded it up. Now I'm just gonna disconnect characters, or I can do a manual camera. And those who have eagle eyes in the audience maybe can notice the issues that with the map that you wanted to fix. But the map itself looks good. I still like it. Like there's still stuff we could like follow. So this is the map. This is what it used to look like. It was all the layout and all the like how it looks and stuff like that.
Cool.
But if I zoom in a bit closer and just take random like shots like around the map, right? And just do the things. Like it doesn't stand out unless you know what to pay attention to. Like for example, here we have these like block dirts, right? Like blocks of dirts, right?
Yeah.
And there's no shadow shading. The lines are hard, which speaks to me at least from I don't remember how the old model looked like, but it does seem like the blocks were like painted separately, depending on the floor, right?
Yeah.
The floor was painted first, then the block, or vice versa, and there was no integration basically. I'm gonna reveal the new map. Actually, the new map is already revealed, so let's
It's like,
just
oh,
click on it.
Sock beat you to it.
But don't worry, I'm gonna explain how we got to it because yeah, it's still not perfect. We're still gonna work on it. There's still some like small changes to do, but I think it definitely looks more cohesive. That's probably the best word.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like just having these like soft shadows around everything, you don't see those edges. Yeah.
Oh yes, I'm definitely gonna explain this process because this was a crazy process, and I think it's actually very. Okay, so here's the thing. Like I looked at the map originally, the old map, and I thought I wanted to make a new geometry basically, and after some back and forth, we decided, yeah, all right, let's do the full rework because we're gonna improve the map, and we'll take that as an opportunity to rework the visuals and make it even better. So okay, so we noticed the first issue, the hard edges. So how do we fix the hard edges? One point I wanted to try is points actually. One of them is ambient occlusion. Blender has that built in. You can basically bake it into the textures. And the second one is basically painting within Blender, not within like art programs, but within Blender, because Blender allows you to like paint directly onto the model.
Oh yeah.
As you're like painting on a 3D figurine or something. So you can basically have two separate models, but still paint them as they are one thing. So you can draw like shading, you can draw details and stuff like that. So let's give it a shot. I'm gonna load up an early version of the map, which was basically like basically just the textures. There was like flat textures because at one point we had mm, we had development textures which were basically only meant to see, okay, because there was no lighting, right? We had to differentiate between what is a wall, what is a floor, different heights. Oh, so you're gonna love this. This is a map that used to look like, which was basically flat shading, no nothing. It was basically this. Here it is.
Oh wow. That's
The
cool.
only change that was here was basically the appropriate colors
Hmm.
and differentiation between walls and nothing else.
Oh yeah, just
And
so you can see it for
so the first
yeah.
yeah, so the first goal was with this to basically we wanted to do it in like two different ways. So I wanted to prepare the texture for my friend so he can like paint on top of it without worrying if it's gonna look good or not, like if it's gonna be cohesive. So I will work on the main texture, like the base, which would be like the glue or the meat of the texture, right? So it would have all the ambient occlusion, all the and the mixing between surfaces. So it looks correct and stuff. So I'm gonna load up an even newer version. That version is from this month, actually, at the beginning of this month. This is November 3rd or November 2nd, something like that. So that was a couple of weeks. Okay, that time is actually why is it sometimes so fast and so slow at the same time? I don't get it. But let's check it out. This is one of the smaller changes I made. Like from afar, you might notice something is improved, but this is still like not the final form of the map. So here it is. If you are on a phone, it might not be noticeable. You might have to like launch a preview of it. So just click in and zoom in.
Oh
I can
nice.
also zoom in on some other like parts of it, so you can see what changed. Like what is the difference now?
Yeah, I feel
Here's
like
one of the walls from the sides.
you can definitely tell like immediately, just looking at these two, obviously this one, like you can kind of see the just the subtle shadowing around these areas. It has more of a tangible look. Um,
Yes, basically I did a smear tool around the edges and just went to town with it, and
oh,
that's all it
cool.
took. And about the there was also like we were so experimented with the paint. I like the paint texture, which definitely adds resolution, but we went against it for several reasons. Number one is that it doesn't look good with like if it's applied incorrectly. But when you go automatic with a filter in an app program, this like cohesion gets killed immediately. It's not visible here because the texture is subtle enough so that it could pass off as real, but normally we would want to have these kinds of details applied via Blender and not via Photoshop, for example.
Yeah.
Because like I said, Blender like has the geometry we can paint from perspective basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this has two layers basically. We have the ambient occlusion, which was like it getting darker on the edges, and the texture being a bit, you know, smudged basically. So the edges are like even softer. But now let's jump in I think a week later or a couple of days later, and let's see how it's gonna look like now. I think at one point, I don't know which one, I basically finished the. Oh, I found the commit. This one is from November 5th. Let's check it out. I'm gonna launch it and see how it is, because I do like document all the stages of progress, so I might as well show the textures at one point. And here, this one may seem like a bit of a downgrade at some point, but I think it's closer to the original vision that we are going for. Like if we wanted to do like painterly entirely, I would go with the version I just showed. But here's what we have right now. Like not right now, but before the base texture is finished. This is with the base texture basically. So I get rid of the paper like texture, and this time I went with a painted ambient occlusion. So basically, when it comes to like dark spotches or the bright ones, I did it like by hand, like drawn in Blender, so I could like control where it goes and how it looks like. So you could still like make it much more interesting visually cohesive and stuff like that. Like check this out. Like even though it's not realistic, I think it doesn't give off the impression that this is a 3D model.
Yeah, it definitely looks more like like looking at this, it looks more like a human sketch or not a sketch, but something like a painting or it definitely avoids that like odd, awkward CG perfect angle stuff. So
Yeah,
very
of
cool.
course, I cannot entirely get rid of this because this is a bomb squad and the camera is moving and shaking. So I just had to make sure that it looks good from the angle the gameplay is in.
Yeah.
Because at some point, you can like, for example, I'm gonna show you. This is something that was from the earlier version of the map, which you might not notice, but I will tell you that it's not correct. Here, for example, I was painting from the perspective of the camera, but because it's moving, I can make this like little blip that is actually on the floor and not part of the geometry go behind the character. And it's not a big deal if it's like a small detail, right? But if it's like super big, like here and obvious, then the illusion breaks. Like I can go in front of it, and it's just gonna be, yeah, you can see that you would see this gonna be like a painted floor and not painted wall, if
Oh
that
yeah.
makes any sense. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna try jumping in a couple of versions later. Maybe then we'll see like okay, I want to find the version before the new textures arrived. Let me see which is the one.
Okay.
Uh,
But yeah, on that note, it's crazy how good our eyes are at picking out fake things like that. Like I'm always noticing that when
oh,
I'm
definitely, yeah.
like when I'm in a VR, like I play around with the Quest sometimes, and like when you're in a VR environment and you see some cool thing that like a mountain in the distance, and it's like that's clearly painted onto a flat plane. It's like my eyes can definitely like tell that immediately. It's it's annoying actually how how sometimes easy it is for us to like pick out tricks and things. So it's like you got to fight against that when you're making a map.
Yeah, this is precisely why like people like when they try to do a real like closer to real life art styles, you kind of have to be a big company. Like who tried it? Epic and Valve, and they are like super big with Robo Recall and like Half-Life Alyx, right? And these look incredible. You can still pick out the differences, but it's just good enough that you can still trick yourself into believing you are actually inhabiting a world and it's not like stylistic and stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, like you
Okay,
said,
so the
you need
version.
such big resources to do that. It's like
Oh
darn
yeah.
reality is so
So you kind of,
detailed.
yes, you have to kind of go like stylistic if you want to go indie. So it
Yeah.
turns out the version that I showed is the newest one that I had. So let me see if I can like get the newest version and see if I can like show close-ups of the map itself, right? Because of course it's not perfect. Like for example, if you go back to the previous screenshot of the new map, for example, the top platform is super dark, for example, and there was like one thing that we wanted to make sure is that you know what is a floor and what is a wall. Like it's super separated, and you can basically navigate. Because if you don't have lighting, because Bombscott doesn't have really lighting, it has like pretend lighting,
Yeah.
then then you kind of have to make sure that. Oh, I'm gonna show you an example of how easy it can be. For example, I'm gonna make it easier for you, and I'm gonna show a different camera angle so it's gonna be easy. For example, this is how the map looks like from a camera angle. It's the top platform, right? And I'm standing against a wall. Like you could probably like deduce that from the screenshot alone.
Yeah.
But what if I decided to make it a bit zoomed out and like make a screenshot like from the perspective of the game camera? Now you're gonna see that there's little separation basically. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
difference between the color difference is very subtle, so it takes a lot of effort to like make it look good, but I'm kind of happy with the current version, but it's still gonna be improved. Like Sok mentioned that he wants to improve it even more, and he works with his friend too, so it's like a collaboration actually. Now I made the base, Sok made the stuff, and he is working on more stuff, more details. So it's definitely gonna look even more like interesting down the road. Maybe not interesting, but at least like cohesive, like a painting you're actually walking onto. Oh, and we made sure that the characters are like stand out from the background definitely. So we have the outlines, for example, which only the characters are gonna have, and the
Cool.
interactive elements, and the map itself is gonna be painterly because yeah, we wanna make sure you can clearly separate those two.
Yeah.
In MomSquad, it's super easy to separate because most textures have like these yes, they are colorful, but they're not as saturated. They're closer to like more natural colors, even though it's like bumped up the saturation a little bit. But characters are definitely way more colorful,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
moving, and it's physics based. So so there was some thought put into it. So yeah, this is something that is very easy to like ignore if you just make something because it's cool. Like there's a reason there are art directors in when making games and movies and TV shows and VFX, like everything. Like someone has to sit down and tell you how this is gonna look and how what the rules are regarding this and why are these rules in place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've done a really
This is
good
them up.
good job here, like the character contrast, just looking at the screenshot, the character definitely stands out. The overall tone of the background is kind of darker and more muted. Um, I
Oh
remember
yeah.
noticing that like in old Nintendo games back in like the 90s or 80s or something, like some of them would have these art styles where it was like all these really detailed, trying to be realistic sprites, but it wound up being like too noisy, and sometimes I wouldn't even like be able to like see the character against them or something. So it's always been an important thing, and not everyone always gets it right.
And even in those games that try to be stylistic, they even though they still use like photos of real stuff, like Mario 64, for example. There's like a whole project where they try to recreate the game, or to make it look like promo art with like 90s renders and stuff.
Huh.
And they had to track down like sources of the original textures. So they did like some Japanese CDs with textures on them, and they were all photos and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
Some of these have like strange sources and stuff like that. And it turns out Mario was trying to be much more realistic than we kind of remember as the final product.
Yeah.
It was still like whimsical and dreamlike, but still realistic,
Yeah.
even though limited by poly count.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny in general, like older games, I feel like the ones that aren't trying to be realistic, or some in Mario's case, maybe it was trying to, but it was limited by the technology. But like looking back, I think we mentioned this before, like looking back on old Zelda games or something, like the ones that were trying to be realistic, I feel like those look less good now because they're obviously limited by their tech. But more stylistic ones look better.
Okay, so I'm gonna look up Mario 64 renders, and it turns out, yeah, Nintendo really wanted the game to kind of try and look like the renders, even though it's still like limited by technology. Like, of course, it looks super different compared to the actual game,
Oh yeah.
but it tries to be close to that. So there was like still an art style here, even though they use like realistic textures and stuff.
Interesting.
Sometimes it's just easier when you have easy access to an image and you can just use it, and it will be masked by the technology or the resolution or anything.
Yeah. But I know I've mentioned this before, just talking about like art styles as a shortcut. That was largely the reason that I kind of switched Bomb Squad to be, using photogrammetry and photographic textures. Is a lot of it was just like limited bandwidth on my end. Like I couldn't spend time painting detailed textures, and that seemed like a nice way to get something that looks at least realistic. If um, it turned out to be a decent amount of work, as you've mentioned, to like actually map all that onto the models and stuff. But at the end of the day, you get nice shadows and all that lighting interaction. It's all real, so it's like you get a lot of that for free then. So it's kind of a time saver as well as a style.
Yeah, and you didn't have to like code the lighting or stuff. Only just like super simple stuff like change the colors or something. Like no shadows or anything.
Yeah,
Like you could
yeah.
make something super easy.
There's like the simple like projection based fake shadows slash lighting, but that's all.
Yeah. And we basically, when I was making my maps, I tried to basically replicate this, but purely with the limitation of I don't have a good camera, so let's just make everything in the computer. How hard can it be? And it turns out, yeah, it is still just as hard, if not more so. There's more stuff going wrong because you're not relying on the reality to carry you to the realistic approach. You just kind of have to fake it
Oh yeah.
and make it work.
All right. Peace out,
Of
not
course,
OP.
some. Oh, let's see. Yeah, the texture is definitely not perfect, but we'll definitely like look at it, check it out. There's still lots of stuff to
So
change.
it's talking
Well,
about just like the
it's
fall off on
definitely,
the glow here, I guess.
yeah. So we tried to go like for this bloom style, I think. So I guess what the guy is complaining about, or at least gives the feedback of, is that it seems to be like isn't in good ratio, which I think means basically it seems like it's too big or doesn't fit much at all, something like that. So for example, you have this small, super bright rock, but then you have this like big blob of light, like it doesn't fit.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But that's at least my like
yeah.
interpretation of the feedback.
I like the like to me this glow feels like cozy. It feels like a glow. It definitely feels good. I feel if you do a glow wrong, sometimes it can feel like just haze or it doesn't feel like real light. It just feels like a blurry blob or something. So this definitely feels
Oh yeah,
like lights on a cave wall. It definitely has that nice cozy look.
yeah, definitely. So definitely, if you wanna fix this, I'm probably gonna we're still gonna have this have like similar aesthetic still. Like probably use the same brushes or something. Like for example, you could look at that. You could make the shape a more distinctive. For example, you could place like more steps of light because for now I can see two steps, but we could add a third, for example, around the crystals and make it better follow the crystals. There's lots of stuff you could
Yeah,
do to make this look simple. Yeah, let me see this too, on the second monitor or something, so we could take a
yeah.
look
You could
around.
like
For example, the
slightly.
purple crystals on the top right, for example, this is like a good, I think, example of what I mean. So, for example, here we have two steps as well, but I think they follow the crystals a bit better.
Yeah,
Like you have these like tiny crystals which are super bright, but they're small, so the area isn't like super covered, stuff like that. But
yeah.
yeah, lots of stuff you could do. Of course, this is we have more freedom with this art style because we don't try to be fully realistic. We just
Oh
try
yeah,
to
yeah,
be close enough, or at least be believable, because that's what we aim for, believability.
yeah,
And while sometimes like the geometry itself can be convincing, maybe sometimes some tiny little things they can like break the thing.
yeah. But I guess I could see like if it had like a just a tiny little bit of effect like further out or something because I feel like the contrast is really pleasant here. But yeah, like maybe if it casted a tiny bit more like light further across the wall or something, like maybe that would make it feel more, I don't know, physical, or maybe that's the kind of the comment that was there. I ran into I was experimenting with similar thing myself. This is kind of silly,
Oh,
but
let's see.
I was revamping the console a bit, and so I was playing with the glow on this cursor. so I was trying to get just like a pleasant, just like nerdy looking glowy console cursor thing. And I wound up, this wound up being like a few different elements. There's like a single like white glow in the middle, and then a very subtle, like very big, very colored glow like on the outside. So it's like you know, two very distinct different elements, just trying to kind of get that like pleasant. Hopefully when you stand back from it, it just looks like a glowy cursor, but it's kind of one of those weird things where you have to think about different things like the hot part in the center is more white, and then it's more like a saturated color on the outside. It's not something
Yeah.
where you can just like do a single color and it looks right. It's just one of those weird tricks, or like a lightsaber. When you're looking at like a lightsaber, it's like the
Oh yeah.
outer part is a very saturated color, but the inner part is just white. Um, just
Yeah,
one of
so
those weird little things.
the point of bloom is to kind of like showcase the overwhelming light that hits the camera, right? So the white would be the brightest part that is so bright we cannot make out detail, and then we have this slightly less bright part that is actually carrying color, and that's what the bloom is.
Yeah. Well, this is very cool. Not to shift the. I love the
Let's
it's
check
like
it out.
yeah, I love the like all the detail here on the structure here. Very cool stuff.
Oh, so this is one thing that I think is actually worth mentioning because even though we know this is 3D graphics and it's not trying to be real, it kind of reminds me of like those old games that try to be like stylistic. So reminds me of Little Big Planet actually,
Oh yeah, yeah, it kind of does.
and games that had tried to be like this low poly kind of stylistic. This is something that you could go. For example, if you this is like this strange like border, like you can go full stylistic or full real, but at some point you can, if you try to go for realism, there's like bigger scrutiny towards detail. But if you are not actually trying to go super realistic, you just want to convey the style, like not actually be realistic, there's lots more like license to be a bit more expressive. Like here, for example, I see the 3D geometry right here, right? With those hard edges
Mhm.
around the borders. But it doesn't matter to me all that much, even though it could be like slightly improved. But generally, the whole vibe is like it doesn't matter. It still looks good, and like the whimsy is there, so that's all that matters. I guess
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what try to be like this whimsy, you know.
Yeah, it reminds
As
me
for
like a style that kind of reminded like this actually reminded me a little bit of like the Zelda Breath of the Wild style, where it's kind of I don't know if you'd describe it as the same thing, but it's clearly trying to be kind of flat and not aiming for realistic, but also not aiming for totally
oh,
stylized
I
either.
know what this reminds me of, the Yoshi games that try to do arts and crafts
Oh,
thingies.
interesting. Okay, don't think
So
I've
they
played
have
those.
like cardboard, they have wool, and they look like that kind. But imagine those games, but in 3D and kind of early 3D that they try to do like think of that like it's hard to say because we don't have a console that could like scream this kind of art style except like PlayStation 2 or something like that,
Yeah,
where the 3D was just getting good enough to be realistic, but not there yet.
yeah, yeah,
Like N64 and PlayStation 1 are too simple, and Yoshi's Story was a 2D game, so that's not really a good comparison. But it still tried to go for this like arts and crafts environments, like
yeah.
here. As if it's good, if it's a good bomb squad map, it's a different discussion entirely.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I guess we're just talking about visual stuff. One thing
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, like talking about all this stuff in terms of like blending, edges, which helps things look not, CG. It makes me wonder, like, if it would be possible to like automate this somehow. Like if people are submitting models or maps or whatever, like maybe run all
Well,
that through Blender and just have it like kind of doing an ambient occlusion bleeding pass somehow on their textures or something. If as long as there's like not repeating textures, so like everything would map to a single location. If it would be possible to kind of like automatically kind of smear everything out into each other, you know what I mean?
well, I tried that,
Oh no.
and it turns out, it wasn't good.
Ah.
So the issue is sometimes the cubes basically like the black outline. Sometimes there's like okay, Blender is doing a decent job at figuring out how light should behave,
Uh huh.
but sometimes it goes bonkers and just places like black blocks and the effect breaks basically. And in other points, sometimes is uh, like the geometry maybe isn't perfect or something like that. And yeah,
Yeah, I guess there's probably technical considerations there where it's gonna or depending on how if you have your stuff mapped, it's gonna like you'll see the edges of some occlusion popping up into other places where it wasn't intended or yeah. So tricky problem, I guess.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, when I think I've shown the zombie gunship stuff I was working on a while. Ship survive. So
that was
this
a
is
while ago.
yeah, it was a while ago, but the game I was working on with my friends, I was kind of like the graphics guy. Um, uh, oh, it's on Steam. Cool. Brr, brr, brr.
Had no idea.
But anyway, here you can kind of see it. So I was just trying to like come up with an automated like baking process for all these. Our artist would like build these buildings, and I'd run it through Maya and do like all these bakes to just kind of like try to kind of bake ambient occlusion and all this stuff into both the buildings, but also like into these like invisible texture planes on the ground. So you get a little bit of just like the surrounding light and the surrounding ambient occlusion and stuff. Just trying to kind of get that cohesion a little bit, where things just kind of feel a bit more
Oh
connected
yeah.
and you don't get those edges. So I feel like it worked decently well there. But yeah, there were some fun tricks I came up with, like I said, like baking lighting into like these transparent polygons, and then
Yeah.
so these could be spilling light out onto the ground here, even though it's just a fake transparent quad. Um,
Yeah. Although for a phone game, I think this is kind of probably the only way to do it. Like
oh
you
yeah, yeah,
cannot really do it in real time and
yeah. You
stuff.
can't do it real time. I mean, that's starting to be a thing. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, PC. There's some amazing stuff with Unreal Engine and Lumen, is it? Whatever, like the real time stuff. But um, or in the FLIR mode, which is where you're actually playing, it's like the heat vision mode or whatever, that's almost a bigger thing because then we had to kind of do these edges around everything, so like everything is kind of surrounded with this kind of glow stuff. So yeah, it just gets me wondering about like automated ways to do stuff like that. Um, cool.
So yeah, it turns out the project, like, even compared to the gameplay we had before, it's still much better. Like, we're still like working on the gameplay stuff mostly,
Uh-huh.
and once that is done, we are gonna go and make it like more polished in terms of like, how it looks like. So that's like the presentation. So now we just focus on the one good map, several characters. For example, for now we aim for 9, I think, with the roll call and stuff. We definitely plan more for the future, but for now we just want to get the main 9 characters like playable and looking good and balanced and stuff,
Yeah.
and fun.
Oh
So
yeah.
we have like a strong base we can like expand, because yeah, this game definitely won't be like one and done thing. It's definitely gonna be updated.
Yeah. Cool.
But as for like announcements, I'm definitely gonna wait for that a bit, because I'm not the guy. I'm just the guy that makes the game
Yeah.
and gets things done with the gameplay and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to. If you hit any more milestones, love to take a look.
Yeah, we'll
Whatever.
definitely share of those. Yeah, once they come and once they become like official.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. Like I love how the characters, they stand out very well on the backgrounds and things like that.
Yeah, of course, this is the dev texture, but yeah, the point still stands, because even though our own cave still has that quality, I feel.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't talked about this in a while. We can maybe jump into this topic for a bit. Any plan to add stats to characters?
Oh, I remember this one.
It's oldie but a goodie. It's not on the roadmap, so we can't show roadmap Siegel. Um, but yeah, this has been a common request, is to add stats, or have certain characters have stronger punches or throw bombs farther or things like that. And like my official response to that, or my official stance on that, is like, if mini games want to do that, like I'd love to support it for stuff like this, or people making like RPG type things. Um, I'd like to leave that open and up to them. Like if someone wants to make something where you can pick 5 different characters that have totally different strengths, like that could be a fun game. But I kind of feel like I shouldn't impose that at like a high level in a way that all mini games would have to adapt to, because I feel like it would be hard to balance that. If you have a character that runs faster or something, they're always going to win a race mini game. Or if you have a character that
Yeah.
is super slow but super tough, like maybe they're always going to win like a death match on a certain map or something like that. So
Yeah, there was like a huge discussion about this in one of the discussions, and one stance on it was basically, Bomb Squad doesn't have a lot of moving sliders in terms of what the characters can do. The game is simple, and generally it's unavoidable to make abilities that are like universally good. So, for example, you can have one character dominate just because the things they do is always relevant, like for example punch damage or something like that, and trying to make them like specialists, or have them like be unique in their own unique way, is also like a different way to for problems. But for Eon, for example, the gameplay, let's be honest, it's much more complex than Bomb Squad, not in terms of movement or physics, even though it does have that, but just there's much more interactions and stuff to tweak, like for example movement speed, different abilities, health, knockback, stun duration and stuff like that. We can change all those, but for Bomb Squad, there's less, for example, like sliders, less stuff to tweak, at least in my opinion.
yeah.
So it's hard to make, for example, make a character that has stronger bombs. Now, if you have a character that has better ice bombs, then okay, who's gonna be better? Like please answer me. Like, of course, it's gonna be the guy that throws better bombs every time, right? Even though the ice bombs could be like nukes.
Yeah.
They was like it would be like a character that's strong in every situation is always gonna be better than a character that's strong in some situations. Like, that's the unfortunate reality of it, and that's kind of why I was very against this idea, because one thing that idea has already been done in a game mode. It was called Superhumans, I think, or Superpowers. Every time you spawn, you got a new character with a unique power, and it just didn't work. Like, some characters were super strong, some were not fun at all, and it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff for it to go wrong. So generally, when a we have to add like systems with like characters that are different, the game kind of has to be built from the ground up, and that's kind of why I was able to get away with it with my gun mod, and why SOC it's kind of necessity for Eon, right? Like the game is built around unique characters and toolkits,
Yeah.
and most that is not that.
That's true. It's a good point here talking about like offline story mode or something, or like particular campaign. Like I could see it working in a context like that where it's single player. Something where it is kind of built around making those decisions. Like maybe there's a you know
Yeah, that
certain
makes
ways.
more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of I think the worry was that it couldn't work for like all multiplayer situations or all situations. But yeah, something like that would be interesting to come up with like a campaign or something where there is some sort of progression mechanic. Uh, yeah, just maybe
But
either
the
very
same
very
thing.
slight stat tweaks or just maybe some power up that would let you get different types of weapons more often or who knows.
But progression, but not all progression is built equal. Some progression is all about new skills, and some of the band is about small stat boosts. And I don't have to tell you, but I think the first one is much more interesting than the second one.
Yeah.
Like even though the second one is much easier to do
Yeah.
and faster.
But in general, like that's a big thing I've been thinking about. Like I feel like Bomb Squad was is a fun game and fun situations, but it didn't have like a meta, too much of a meta aspect. So it does get my mind working, thinking about like what would be fun ways to introduce more meta aspect. In terms of like leveling something up or something like that, or just a bit more like long term strategy type stuff you could do.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I learned in game design and what I learned from other people is that generally when people like decide to play a certain way or pick a certain thing, then chances are they're gonna stick with it, and it definitely won't like. Uh, okay, here's the thing: when you add a skill tree, people are gonna ask for a restack option immediately.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: if you make a skill tree that's super impactful and allows the players to screw themselves over, for example, buff something but leave something unattended,
Yeah.
and that creates interesting gameplay scenarios, some people might not like that, and they would ask for a respec option. So this is like a tricky thing to balance in terms of like meta progressions. So you could have something like create a skater in like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, where the stats are basically just simple, and you are not completely useless if you have everything at the starting position. And basically having it be better basically allows you to do more tricks or longer tricks, and you can basically play any map even on the lowest character, so it doesn't matter much. But if you want choices to matter, that's a different like
Oh
challenge
yeah.
of game
Yeah.
design. Game design is hard. There's lots of things to go wrong,
Yeah.
and meta progression has always been I avoid the package basically. Like it work for me. There's lots of stuff to wrong, and for because here's the people like meta progression every single if they don't belong, and we have to kind of explain like learn if Bomb Squad not only would benefit from such a system, but will it improve the game and how much it would like suck the fun of the game. Because here's the thing about the co-op in current game: the only thing that's stopping you from beating it is your own skill and maybe some luck, but generally your skill. And I think that makes it so that you can complete the game from start to finish and feel like you've improved. You could beat it faster, you could take less damage, you could do something, and you could say I did it, not because I waited and grinded for points, for example. And I didn't kick myself about not picking a damage boost instead of a speed boost or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is something like simple and pure about that. So it's like you said, it's a balance.
It is a balance, yeah. And I think Bob Squad definitely has this super easy game that somehow people found ways to be technical in.
Yeah,
As I did when I first started playing. Like we just looked at the physics, found out, okay, can I do this? And it turns out it worked, and then it turned out you could use this in combat. Yeah, that's why I think the game is taken as seriously as it does.
yeah. Which I know I've mentioned this a lot before, but yeah, people asking me like, "Oh, how did you design the bomb jump and stuff?" I was like, "I didn't. I was just like, I just wanted to make fun, goofy physics, and
Emergent
people
gameplay.
invented things." Uh,
I love emergent gameplay stuff, really.
So
even though you cannot really design for it, but you can still put the pieces in place.
yeah, and so I think yeah, that's kind of the fun is like putting the pieces in place and seeing what people come up with. Um,
At the same time, though, bomb jump, I feel okay. I'm gonna say a hot take. Bomb jump is bad for the health of the game,
oh
especially
shucks.
if you play as
So
yes,
yeah, I know.
unfortunately,
Oh yeah, good.
because here's the thing. I think the bomb squad players kind of don't kind of treat the technical skill much more than like strategy or good play. So, for example, they look at bomb jump, they think that's cool, I'm gonna do that, and then beat assault, and then the assault is like all like the games turn into who kills everybody, and then you go on easy cap because it's super easy to do. You just like do the thing. Or people who like play on Epic and said you can only do this on Epic, even though you can do it in real. And here's the thing, I think there's this culture in Bomb Squad, and I'm not part of that culture, but I noticed it, is that people who like try very, very hard to prove themselves they're better at the game. They like treat the game super seriously, there's no fun allowed, and kind of and I'm not joking, that's how
Sheesh.
I see these people like react and talk about the game. Like if you have an argument and they don't agree with your argument, they're gonna say, hey, 1v1 me or something like that. So
Yeesh.
that's it's hard to treat these people seriously, even though they might have a point, but it's extremely hard. Like Sok mentioned, like the player servers sometimes can get pretty toxic because the game is easy, but at the same time encourages like mechanical skill, and it's all like dumped onto a single person if you lose. Like the game is
Oh
super
yeah.
punishing, even though the game encourages you to play dirty, die, and respawn quickly.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a legitimate strategy like positioning, where I could outplay players and get kicked for being too good, because that happens.
Oh yeah.
Then so that kind of takes the fun out of online play. And I hope when squads get added, this will be eliminated somehow, or at least made
Yeah.
in such a way that there's no pressure to climb ranks, no pressure to be like the best, no pressure to just like you can just like, this is a casual play, just play and have fun. Like
Yeah, that's my
I don't want
hope.
the game to be extremely seriously. So I think this is something we have to take care of when we design the squad system, or at least design, the game itself, because right now there's this prevailing like entitlement, maybe not entitlement, but elitism
Yeah.
from a certain group of players that makes it basically not fun to engage with these people in any conversation, even
Oh.
on these forums. If you sometimes have a lookout for it, you can notice these players, like they share clips, they make like super cool montages, or like super cool in quotation marks basically. You can notice these people, and I just don't want. So here's the thing: bomb jump kind of people practice that, but don't practice strategy. They don't practice like teamwork. They don't practice not dying as much. So all you get is like, I'm gonna practice this thing, and I'm gonna be super cool. And unfortunately, some game modes struggle the most with this, like Assault, for example, because this map is all about being fast and getting to the flag, right? And killing everybody. So of course, bomb jump is gonna break this mode, right? You don't need to take shortcuts, because reaching the point is like extremely easy once you get the execution down, especially on gamepad, because that's the easiest way you can do this like reliably.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the issue that I just mentioned, like the game is obviously built for gamepad. Some people prefer on keyboard, and some prefer on touch. But here's the thing: they're not equal. Like the gamepad and keyboard have a run button, and the touchpad doesn't. It's easier to press buttons on one and not on the other. It's like it's strange, because normally when a game gets released on multiple platforms, the issue is about, oh, they have mouse and keyboard, they can aim really well, and we have a pad, and we need aim assist to be viable and stuff. So it's a tricky thing to balance, definitely, and it's I don't think this can be solved even.
Yeah, that's my thought on that. It kind of seems like it's just a natural advantage to a degree, and my hope is just to make it. It's like you don't want to. I feel like you don't want to like separate those people into different leagues or something like that. I mean, that's one way you could do it, but I feel like hopefully just make it fun for people, even if they're playing on using touch or whatever, where it's you have a natural disadvantage. It's almost like I think of it as like if you're playing, but you're like old and you don't play video games or something like that, and you have naturally slow reflexes. It's just like hopefully you can still enjoy the game, even though you're never gonna compete for the first place Diamond League or anything like that. I just say kind
Yeah.
of
Okay.
that's the hope anyway.
So like a TLDR for the Rust rambling because I hope I don't ramble too much.
Oh no, it's quite all right.
But all right, and so generally to make this point across, hopefully when we get well, like we introduce a ranking system or matchmaking system or whatever, then we gonna like try to aim to keep the casual like atmosphere and nature, and hopefully maybe not ban these techniques, but make them so that the game is like okay. So here's the thing: I don't want to take like technical execution away, but if it encroaches on game design, like for example assault, or the game becomes like centralized on it, I think this is when the game kind of breaks. Because for example in Melee, which is like the quintessential game meant to be casual, was turned being serious by the competitive folk.
Yeah,
But here's the thing: the techniques, I don't think they break the game in a big way. They just give more tools for people who want that expression. But in Bomb Squad, the bomb jump kind of forces you to use it on assault
yeah,
and on some game modes as well. It's like sometimes it's super good, but I don't use it. I can beat matches without it. I just play defensively on assault, for example, and in CTF I just look out for people and just make the good decisions. That's what a good player should do.
yeah. Well, that's my hope is that
Not just
with squads mode and kind of scene v2 and like this upcoming stuff. I know I'm kind of hesitant to make any gameplay physics changes right now, just purely because of backwards compatibility stuff. But that's my whole reason for this big mess with 1720 and splitting out scene v1 and into scene v2 and everything like that. Is that hopefully we can maybe revamp that stuff a little bit. Maybe take out some stuff that's too OP, or you folks have come up with such fun little tweaks, for mods and things like that. Just kind of like it'd be great to pull some of that in and just do like a slightly polished version of gameplay for squads mode. Like that would be great. And I'm hoping too that some of squads mode itself will, like you said, the fact that it'll probably be emotes, like just communication. Enemies will be able to emote and not chat. Hopefully that'll cut down on toxicity.
Yeah.
Or just the fact that it's randomly matched against people. Hopefully there's enough people playing that you're not gonna like get matched against toxic people too often, or have it.
Oh, I was doing some research on that actually recently because I've been working with SOC on that problem actually, and and collected some materials. After this stream, I can send you some of it so you can study on your own.
Cool, yeah, that'd be great.
It's called, so I think this might be like super interesting to you, especially since we want to try to build this kind of game that we don't want people to take seriously. Like there's lots of ways you can go about it, but one thing I noticed is that you can either make the game like soften the blow somehow, by of course the art design, the mechanics that don't frustrate and stuff like that. You could encourage friendly competition, or you could make it easier for the players to blame the game and not the other people. Like there's lots of ways you could do that.
Yeah.
For example, like Bobscat kind of makes it easy somehow. Like for example, the shield and the boxing gloves. Like these are direct power-ups, and obviously if you take them, it's always gonna be beneficial for you. There's little situations there are where you shouldn't take it. But here's the thing: when you win with those, do you blame the player or do you blame the power-ups? People blame the power-ups. Like Sok just mentioned, he hates the shield and boxing glove, but this is one thing where we can shift the blame. Like you get toxic, but not towards the player that uses him, although some people do take too far. But randomness can do that too. Some other mechanics can do that. Like when the skill is basically diminished, that's one thing you could do. But we of course don't want to take all of it away. We don't want the game to play itself. Like people like the physics stuff you can pull off in Bomb Squad, so we definitely don't want to nerf those, right? Unless it's like over centralizing. Like thinking over centralizing, punch grabbing. Do you know what is this or not really?
Vaguely. I know I've heard the term. I like refresh me.
Okay, so here's the thing. In the game, when you punch somebody very hard, they get stunned, right? And another mechanic is if you grab someone stunned, their stun is like slightly elongated. Mm-hmm. So you could combine those two. And there's also another thing. You can punch and grab at the same time. So what you do is punch people, grab them, and now you have like a full second to either use the momentum to throw somebody extremely far away, or you can, for example, grab them late to prolong their stun and, for example, carry them off the edge and throw them. So that is frustrating, and at some point the game's turned into basically that.
That's a bummer.
So that's how it works. Oh, and Sock says it's apparently much worse. Punch grab spam. Oh, here's the thing. Yeah, like I mentioned, this tactic became like over centralizing, and basically you are always encouraged to use it. So
Okay.
so this is the thing, because Bolt has such a simple game, it's easy to like make one thing super useful and super centralizing. So at one point we nerfed spinning around, right?
Yeah.
So what people did was instead of doing full spins, they did quarter circle spins, and they were like booty shaking, I call it,
British.
to get the yeah, I use that term because I think it's more memorable and stuff.
I can see it.
So
Yeah, I think I've seen that in video, like replays. Yeah, people doing that, just booty
yeah,
shaking.
I think it's better than punch grab spam, because here's the thing: punch grab spam by itself, punch grab is not a bad mechanic. Like, you have to build up speed to get lots of damage and lots of stun, but grabbing can like still set up for the thing. But here's the thing: you don't have to build up lots of speed to actually like get that stun. You can just basically do a semi decent hit, grab them immediately to put them into prolong their stun, and you can even like grab them a second time to do it. Like, oh, I can show it on video. For example, I recorded a demonstration for my game mode that I was promoting, and there you can actually witness that in the video, which I think is gonna be super useful to me what I'm talking about. So you can punch to stun people, then you can grab them to make them stun for longer, which gives you more time to throw them away or do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
And this can be super frustrating because it feels like we are stunned from longer than we were supposed to. I think this is probably deliberate in the mechanics department, probably in the physics engine or something, because I know a lot of code, sparse code, is in the engine because it's all physics based, right? You have this character which basically has the stun calculations when they break out of stun and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we cannot really control that directly. We can only like give a force, and then the code does whatever it wants with it. So let me see if I can find it. I have this folder with stuff, so I'm just gonna find misc mods. Oh, demos. All right, this is the demo, and this is the game mode which I did. So it's still not in API 8, but I'm only posting it because it showcases the kind of behavior that I meant, and you'll see at one point. So wait until there's only 2 people remaining. So that's gonna be probably half a minute in when we both fight. Let's go to full screen, and yeah. So the third person is gonna die. No worries. Okay, I'm gonna show this. So when I have like 9 or 8 on the clock, you're gonna notice it. Punch, grab. See that regrab? This regrab basically prolonged the stun duration. Like, the first punch was kind of strong, but then the second grab definitely like changed the way. And it's definitely not fun to play that way.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, this does make me think like it would be a great opportunity because I mean I'm gonna have to recode. I mean, probably won't be able to plug squads in with like Scene V1, like the old gameplay stuff, because that is so hardened or coalesced around the whole like classic everything. So it'll probably have to be kind of a slightly rewritten thing anyway. So it could be a really good opportunity to maybe just talk to all you folks and do a polish pass and try to get some of the worst exploits out of there. Maybe we could nerf shields and gloves a bit. Just try to get like a slightly improved version of kind of classic gameplay, just as like a starting point for squads.
I think this is gonna be a challenge. This is gonna be a challenge, and I say that as someone who worked in game design for 4 years.
Yeah.
So here's what I did in JRMP, which was 2 years ago, which is not perfect, but here's what I did. So the issue I saw at the time was that there's always advantageous to grab after punching, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to give people reasons to sometimes punch and not grab. So I came up with a grab counter mechanic, which was borrowed from fighting games. But the idea is, if someone grabs you and you press the grab slightly later, then you break out of grab and they get stunned and knocked back a bit. So you could, for example, turn that back on them.
Oh yeah.
When they grab and they become predictable, you can punish that with a counter of your own, and you can basically punch them or grab them. And another thing which makes it balanced is that you cannot spam the button because grab is actually on cooldown. So you can only grab once every second, unless you land the grab, which means you can throw at any time.
Okay.
So there's another like incentive to, for example, grab someone and release immediately to stop the counter from happening, but then you cannot really do much with them otherwise. You can
Yeah.
only like shove them or something like that. But if you hold them up in the air, you're actually putting yourself at risk. But if you're unpredictable with your grabs, you can, for example, sometimes punch or grab them later, and that way you can basically like still get it. But it's like these mind games.
Oh yeah.
And the benefit is, or kind of a meme at this point in my community, is that sometimes you could pull these off by accident or just by pure instinct, which I think adds to the Bomb Squad like chaotic vibe, even though the mechanic is technically kind of arbitrary, kind of not explained at all. And some might even wonder how that even got in the game, or how you can punish if you are stunned. Because
Oh,
here's
yeah.
the thing, you can counter even if you're stunned. It only matters if you're grabbed or not.
Okay.
So this is probably the only way you can attack or defend yourself while being stunned. Because in the original game, if you get hit hard, that's it. You kind of have to lie there and you wait until it like wears off, right?
Yeah.
But in GRP, you can actually fight that. You can actually still do something. So that's not the perfect solution. It's still a solution, basically giving people options.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely like was much more like one of the better conceived mechanics, one of the more accepted mechanics in JRMP, because there's lots of mechanics like in JRMP that some of them work, some don't. So I think we can use that as kind of like a proof of concept or a case study of what could be done. But I think for regular Bomb Squad, we definitely don't want to go for arbitrary mechanics. We kind of want to go for something that is like easy to understand. Like, you know how in quick time events, for example, you press the button fast and the character like gets up quickly or something.
Yeah.
And in Bomb Squad, you could have something like that, for example. But then you could have like button mashing, like either like turbo buttons that do it for you, for example.
Oh yeah.
And of course we wanna, because here's the thing, stun is never fun.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
very
Yeah.
rarely is it fun in games. And so this is like, I remember how in Street Fighter 2 there was stun, which was sometimes built up randomly, but the creator of Mortal Kombat loved that stun, but hated it when he got it. So what he did was basically put that stun at the end of the fight where it didn't matter.
Oh
So you could
yeah.
still get to feel cool. So that's how fatalities were made.
That's interesting. That's a cool bit of history.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so here's the thing where I'm going at with Bomb Squad. We definitely want to keep the game easy to play, maybe have some kind of mastery still attached to it, even though to some extent we don't want to get people like too attached to the game, or lap the game super hard or something. We don't want frame data or something.
Yeah.
So one thing that comes to my mind definitely is find a way to kind of maybe not remove the stun, but make it like reduced, or at least like have it take more effort to do. Maybe stun shouldn't be applied when you grab, or shouldn't reset when you grab. Maybe there should be more like conditions when it should be stun, because I think right now stun is dependent. Okay, so here's what I think, because I don't know the code. I just know from experience it's dependent on definitely on damage, but it's definitely dependent on whether or not your character is like tipped over. Like, is their head like standing upwards, or are they tilting? If they are tilting, like falling, for example, they may enter stun.
Yeah.
If they're not touching the ground, like that's one matters. If they're tipping over and they're not touching the ground, they may enter stun.
Yeah.
Or it's like this semi-permanence that like doesn't allow you to move or something like that.
Yeah, I'll have to look into the code. It's been a while since I've looked into that like low level spaz code, but yeah, there's definitely something, yeah, like a balance meter. Like as long as you're touching something that is classified as ground, like that is recharging, and when you're not, that's falling. And so yeah, maybe we can just speed that up a bit or something. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes
just
sense, because I know why this is in place. This is meant so if you get lodged by the explosive, if the bomb doesn't like stun you by the damage itself, it's gonna stun you by you being in the air and flying like a ragdoll, which is like supposed to be make the physics like feel more
yeah,
visceral and stuff like that. And the same way when you get hit and, or for example, hit your head on the wall. Like the stun allows you to like, fall over in a funny way, but then the other mechanics allows you to like stay down. For example, it's not like a random thing. It's like action and reaction. Like you hit head, you fall down, you lie there because
Yeah.
you're concussed and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess we basically have. So one thing we could like easily kind of like tweak this, but we have to like watch it, is to like tweak this balance. Maybe have the impact be a bit more like exaggerated, for example, and have the reaction a bit more predictable. Because here's the thing: one thing that I noticed when talking with friends and stuff like that, that sometimes, how did that stun me? That punch wasn't big enough. That wasn't hard enough, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is one thing we could like solve, maybe, because here's the thing: the punch can be. Here's the thing: it isn't just weak, medium, strong, or super strong. It's always like this slight variation between the two, and sometimes there's like this invisible barrier when the punch goes from, oh, I'm stunned for like half a second, to stunned to fall a full second. And sometimes it feels like a hard barrier or arbitrary barrier, or doesn't feel readable at all. Like it is a physics game, so of course like doesn't have to be perfectly readable, but sometimes it feels like you you get stunned for longer than you should, and people notice those more, so they
Oh
complain
yeah.
about stun being long.
Yeah, I would love for it to be. Yeah, I don't like that. Even though it is physics based, for me it's always preferable where it's like you could tell you're stunned because a punch was strong, or you could tell that was a fast moving
Oh yeah,
punch. It's like
definitely.
when there's a clear cause and effect, I like that. But yeah, when the physics just met, when it's just very confusing. That's not good. Um,
One thing also that I kind of don't like is how you grab doesn't have a cool. So one tactic I notice is people like spam grab
uh-huh.
close to people, and they just hope they throw somebody off the stages. Sometimes you can do both punching and grabbing.
Yeah,
So it's asking you to do punch and then grab immediately, right?
yeah,
So one thing we could try, for example, is if cold grab should be like infinite cooldown, then we could, for example, prevent one from happening. So, for example, if you punch, you cannot grab, and when you grab, you cannot punch.
yeah. So yeah, that
Yeah.
that is.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, not to be, I know about headshot damage, but people don't really notice if you hit them in the head or body. It's still opaque.
Okay.
So
So
that
yeah,
so
maybe.
that kind of still proves my point.
Yeah. So maybe that could go away or something. Or if there's something where like you're saying, if there's something where like you get damaged an extra amount and it's not clear why, then that probably shouldn't be in there or whatever. So uh, I think this will be a good
Oh,
opportunity. Like in general, like I was saying, once squads mode is working, we can. My hope is we can just iterate on this a bit with Scene V2, which will only be in squads mode. Which the downside is like gameplay might feel a little bit different if you're playing old stuff, the original campaigns or things like that.
yeah.
But it also means we're more flexible to hopefully get it right for squads mode and stuff moving forward. But I definitely wanted to put that
Oh,
like
yeah.
separate them so that I'm not going to be breaking AI like bot AI and difficulty and other things that were already calibrated for the old campaigns and stuff. So
Yes, this is definitely gonna require a lot of work because there's lots of like tiny little stuff. But if I have to condense down the list of like grievances I have, is that it feels that when you find the perfect strategy, it's best to use that as much as possible because it's super effective.
yeah,
And the other is sometimes info is very opaque. And sometimes you feel like the game punishes you, and you don't why you punish this much more than last time, for example, why you were stunned longer than some previous time.
yeah,
And I think sometimes, okay, so here's the thing: I like that the skill floor is low, even though it's still quite a bit high compared to like party games. I think it still should be quite low. Like we should still allow like players like of lower skill players that just play the game
oh yeah,
to, because here's the thing: even though JRP is more balanced and more strategically deep, it comes at the cost of making the game more for veterans of the game instead of like new people.
yeah,
So this is like a thing we're gonna have to avoid with our changes. So maybe we could bring back the Be Dizzy is fun, is hilarious, I think. So this should stay. The simple concept of move fast, hit hard is still interesting because here's the thing. I like how to get the most damaging punch, you have to run, jump, spin, and hit the head.
yeah.
That is lots of like that is super simple, hard to pull off, but once you do, it is a lot of damage and it's still punishable. So this is like super cool interaction, which I think only comes from all the game mechanics. So, and I think this moment of this idea of build up speed to get the more damage is intuitive, and I think we should leave this. I
Yeah.
think where the issues lie is, like I mentioned, transparency, and of course the grabbing, which I think could be improved or at least made more fun for both sides. Because right now it's kind of like grab is only useful if they are stunned, which means shortly after punching, and when they are not stunned, it's basically for spamming, because once you do that, they are not running, so they deal less damage. They don't know where you're gonna end up, so you might as well keep doing it because you might slip and fall into the edge, which can be fun, but not if you really want like a team-based like combat game, right? Like I fell in love with Bobscat because of Capture the Flag actually, and I played 2v2 with my friends. That was super good, super fun.
Oh yeah.
The most interesting game mode in the collection. Conquest would be better if it had capture time.
Oh yeah. Well, we should add that.
Yeah, I remember adding it in one of my in my JRMP improvements, but yeah, I didn't bother to port it. So it
Okay.
basically had a KOF style capture time and regaining time. So yeah, we Conquest could get a rework for this.
Cool.
Because right now the matches finish in under a minute because it's super punishing one mistake.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, basically, yeah, I would keep all of these like the physics-based like core intact, because this is what I think makes Bomb Squad, right?
Oh yeah.
Grabbing
Yeah.
is kind of like grab kind of facilitates this, but I think it basically like the combination with how it interacts with punch and stun kind of is like an easy like it's a skeleton key towards like degenerate tactics basically. Like back in the day, I thought shaking was bad, but now that I think about it, it's just a tool that makes good like bad players still compete against good players.
Okay.
So
Yeah. That's
maybe we could for example tweak the dizzy to make it happen later, or for example be maybe more strict but not as severe, for example. So there's still funny situations where you fall off, but it's not like you have to know why, because right now if you know about this mechanic, it's probably gonna catch you once and then never again
yeah.
in normal gameplay. So I think it's kind of like a. I know why it was added, because at the time the gameplay was less understood in terms of like gameplay and what was the best. Now this is figured out. The game has been kind of mastered, kind of solved, I think, but only because this one strategy like beats everything.
Yeah.
Like like for example, I could run into somebody and punch them first before they grab me because they get stunned, but then that allows me to grab them and finish them with their own tactics. So
Yeah.
that's just the best way for me to approach it. The best way to confirm a kill, just from them off the ledge.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
This
definitely
is
a lot to
complex. Yeah,
a lot to think about, but I think it'll be fun
that's a good
to
one. Yeah.
yeah to try to take some of this into account. Like I said, for the yeah scene V2 or something. I feel like I approach it kind of from because I haven't played like super competitive multiplayer. Like when I do play multiplayer, it's with a group of friends and they're all new at the game, and so it's like I've approached most style or most strategy or most gameplay decisions from like a newbie standpoint or like what's fun for people who've never played or something. So I definitely want to try to keep that intact, but I'd love to
Oh
try to
yeah.
incorporate some of the stuff you're talking about where like the super advanced players are learning strategies that are exploits and like hopefully there's something that's kind of like a mishmash, a best of both worlds kind of thing. uh,
Yeah. So unfortunately, this is gonna probably gonna require lowering the skill ceiling, which might not be go well against with those who like are super competitive. But I
yeah.
think we can find like new strategies that you can employ that are still like thoughtful, but don't break the game in half. Basically, like they give you more tools.
Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully people, I'm sure there's going to be people that complain, any sort of gameplay tweaks or, you
Of
take away
course,
their
yeah,
favorite exploit, they're not going to be happy, but
of course.
hopefully we can gently coax it in a good direction. So we'll see. Lemon, you said
Yeah,
you have a
it's not
question?
like
Otherwise, we're going to have to wrap up here soon. We already passed the 2 hour mark, so I gotta, gotta get this thing uploaded to YouTube here. Burp, 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 burp. Do any last but yeah, this stuff is super fun to chat about gameplay, this and that. It will be interesting. I mean, I do hope to put, like I said, to have like the squads mode start to be something where we can kind of revise and iterate the gameplay. Scene V2, scene V3, whatever. I hope it's not going to be confusing. Having like if you play the old campaigns, like if the gameplay feels a little different or something like that. Hopefully, people are like, okay with that, or hopefully that won't feel too strange where it's like you go play multiplayer and like your guy feels a little different. Um, but we'll see.
I mean, the physics were already tweaked during that last time. For example, the character was less heavy. They move faster. They can throw landmines further. Some of these are minor, but I noticed them.
Yeah, yeah, there are a few switches in there where it's like the physics are a little bit different. Like if spaz if some attribute on spaz is set to like version 1 or something, so like I guess it's probably a little noticeable that things are already a little different. So hopefully people won't mind too much. Or like
I
once
mean, the changes that were so far, they just made the game a bit more snappy, more less like you're moving through mud, and more like you're actually grounded and move like super this like fast athlete. I think
yeah.
it was for the benefit.
Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Make the game more fun, basically. It's easy.
Yay. Brr, 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 brr. So Yale, message me a DM again if I didn't see that, or I'll anyone who
Oh yeah, the tools, yeah, about the toxicity, yeah, how to deal with it. Yeah, I can send those, yeah.
oh
Thanks
yeah,
for
and then yeah,
reminding me.
send me that stuff too. I'd love to take a look at that. We can start coming up with some plans. What do you process offers? Oh, so many random questions all of a sudden. um, what is this? Oh, friendly fire. Yeah, I don't know. Friendly fire was just kind of fun, just for the random chaos of it. I mean, that would be an interesting thing, like turning friendly fire off. That would totally change the game. But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, physics, body damage, body physics damage. We gotta add those in scene 2.
Oh yeah, yeah. That I do want to. That would be fun to get in there. It sounds like that's fun. So anyway, I feel like all these are topics that would be fun to dive into. Maybe next time. I feel like we're already over, so I should probably
Oh
avoid
yeah.
getting sucked into one of these. But I love talking about all this stuff. So um, anyway, yeah, we
That
should
would be
probably
fun.
wrap it up for the day though, just because, yeah, like I said, we're over. So I should get back to work. I'm curious if they've approved my Mac version yet, um, or rejected it. Hopefully not rejected. That would suck. But probably shouldn't play. Like I said, we're over 2 hours, so I probably should get back to work. Still lots to do. Need to get the Android version put back together, and then on to, yeah, hopefully, yeah, the infinite to-do list. I'm also procrastinating the server work that I don't want to do for keeping the V1 master server running. I found out I can push that off until a little later. Google's not shutting down that old version until the end of January, so I have a few more weeks to procrastinate before I have to do that. but um, but yeah, we should get. I know we said we'd maybe do it today, but we're already out of time, so we'll have to get some gameplay going next time. Um, but anyway, Mr. Mickey Rock, good chatting with you as always, and everyone else.
Thank
Message
you.
me if you asked a question and didn't get answered or anything like that. But um, yeah, I'll try to catch up on DMs and everything else. And so, well, it's been fun, everyone. So I guess I
Cheers.
will. Yep. Talk to all you folks next time. So everyone have a good week or two, and catch you all later. So peace out.